Hello, this is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan, Google Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, or iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. Alright, so I'm back after like a 2-week break. So, you're actually getting a double podcast today, kind of a throwback, something I used to do. Alright. The last time I posted was July 6th. 20 days ago. Okay, so this will be a nice refresher. Like I said, anytime and whenever I have the time to, do a podcast, well, it's as simple as that. It's just, I told you it's hard now that there's a more demanding school schedule for me. Summer it should be easy, but then, of course, occasionally I'll take vacations. We'll see whenever I post. Although, I think I've been decently consistent this summer. I'm not as consistent as I would have hoped to be, but I think I'm doing a decent job with what I've done. And, of course, you're going to expect when September rolls around, it's going to be the same as last year. Probably, maybe the first week of September I can get something in, but October, probably nothing, and most of September, probably nothing. I'll see what I can do for November. I might be able to get a few in there. December, it's going to be a little rough again. And then, probably not going to be back until maybe, like, March or something, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to stick with the same thing I've always promised you over and over again. And that's, I'll just get on it whenever I can. Whenever I have the time. Alright, so Kyler Murray said that there is no place he'd rather be upon his new Arizona deal. And to me, this is very Mahomes-like, because they feel they can still make moves despite the massive contract, and all the money they're giving him. They feel they still have cap space. They feel they still have cap space. And, like with Rodgers, even though I'm a Packers fan, I have to admit, I don't think they were very smart, because they knew getting rid of Rodgers meant it was unlikely they'd be able to sign anyone else or even keep Devontae Adams, which they didn't. They knew there was going to be costs for that. Like, they were doing that at the cost of the team's future, really. They paid him, they knew their cap space would be terrible, and it's getting bad. I'm not gonna put a positive spin on this. It's not looking good for the future. It really isn't. Even this year. I'm gonna say 10-7, 11-6, kind of that range. Probably 10-7, because it's a new system now that Adams is gone. Plus, Rodgers has to find that new number one guy, because once he gets to a number one guy, he sticks with it. He makes that his primary target. He's not really, he's never really, evenly, split between his receivers. And, I don't know. But back to Kyler Murray. I think the deal is good. When you have the guy, you got to keep him. and they probably feel they can still make the moves they have to. Alright, so I know I said I'm not always going to be here, but from now until February, whenever I have the chance to get on a podcast, I'm going to tell you this show is probably going to be 75% NBA, 15% basketball, maybe a good 10% being baseball. The Subway Series is on right now, actually. I think it's 2-1 Yankees, I believe. Yeah, 2-1. But what's great about the NFL, and the reason I talk about it so much more, is because I enjoy it more, honestly. Like, the NBA and MLB are starting to develop kind of for their fan bases, not just me. They're developing, things that I've received reasonable criticism. Like, the load management with the NBA is just, it's getting out of hand, and it's becoming hard to watch. And a point that I've heard some people say is, like, if they're going to go to a game, pay tickets to go to a game, they don't want to go there and see the star players not play because they have a night off, It's also kind of starting to happen with baseball, too. This resting thing. Even though I get why they're doing it, you don't want your stars to be tanked, come playoff time, but that's why you would normally rest them towards the end of the season and not, out of nowhere, like every other month or something, or every week. You can't rest them, and I get they're playing a lot of games, but that's the sport. They knew, when they said they wanted to become an MLB player, they knew that they would have to play 162 games, and even NBA, they'd have to play 82 games a season. They knew that when they aspired to be a professional, And within and the NFL too, I think the main problem with baseball, I don't think the resting is the main problem. I think it's the fact, and this is why I talk about it the least. There's long-term contracts for these star players, and it's once you sign that, you can't really change the team much. And I know people are criticizing NBA for all the player mobility today, but I don't necessarily mind that, honestly. I don't like when a player hops every, single year, Westbrook's been on, 3 teams in, 3 years. And it's, with NFL, there's no contracts that really go over 5 years, other than Mahomes, which was an anomaly. That's rare in the NFL for a quarterback to get that much money for that much amount of time guaranteed, But in baseball, people just give contracts to the best players and have them there for they set them for life, But that I don't know. It's just more manageable. With a salary cap, I believe. Baseball, there's no salary cap, so it's kind of with the Yankees, Dodgers, that's the big markets. By the way, it's not a coincidence that they're the 3 best teams in baseball right now, and they have the biggest market. It's because they got the most money, and that's why everyone goes to them. That's eventually it's going to be it's too dominant, and it kind of gets boring. That's what I was worried about happening with the Chiefs. They all, I thought they, they'd be fun, but eventually it would wear out. Like, eventually you gotta get tired. Because if they were gonna if they were, I don't think they are anymore, what the belief was, they were gonna dominate, make the Super Bowl, for, like, I don't know, a good, 5 out of 7 years, let's say that. If they were going to dominate like that, then even though it would have been a lot of fun to watch, it would have eventually, you would have wore out. Like, the Patriots were boring, and that's why, what's it called? Like, they were a very defensive team. They were they were not a fun franchise, and that's, for as long as they lasted, that's draining, With them, that's so boring. But, it's going to get boring in the MLB. Like, sure, it's going to sell tickets in New York and LA. But all the other teams are going to, what the hell are they going to do? When almost everybody is going to the Yankees, Mets, or Dodgers. That makes it a 3-team league, basically. Everyone else is there playing for, 4th place and lower. It's a rough game. I think there's, just ultimately the reason I like NFL, talk about NFL more, it's just more interesting, the way I see it. Alright, we're going to do a Where Did I Go Wrong segment, because we do these every single week. Or, anytime I can do a podcast on a Monday, so should probably restate that. Alright, let's get it loaded up, the music. Alright,
You began a guided meditation.
Alright, here we go. So, The Athletic and Mike Sando released their quarterback tier list, and it's almost perfect. But let's look at it. Tier 1, you got Rodgers, Mahomes, Brady, Allen, perfect. Burrow and Herbert, I think, are pretty on the line. But I think they make it into tier 1. I think it's a good spot for them. What I don't agree with, though, is I think Wilson's better than Herbert or Burrow. I would argue putting Stafford is also in tier 2. I would argue putting Stafford and Wilson in tier 1. Either along with Herbert and Burrow, or maybe replace them. Maybe replace them. Because, I think Stafford and Wilson are both better quarterbacks overall. Because, and I think Burrow and Herbert are fantastic, but, and, some people will just say, this is just, the Athletic's opinion, but Mike Sando, they do this every year, and they talk to 50 scouts and 50 executives, and that means 50 scouts and 50 executives. they said Wilson and Stafford are tier 2 guys. I think Stafford I can get on board with more so than Wilson. Because Wilson, I think, he had one down year. I don't think that means he goes down. I don't think he goes down a tier because of that. But Stafford, I think there's a valid argument. He wasn't really, because when you think about it, you would bring up that he won a Super Bowl. But, he wasn't even the MVP of that Super Bowl. Like, he wasn't really great until the final drive of it. So, alright. And the only other one that I could find where I really went wrong is, Harden took a pay cut to stay with the Sixers. I wouldn't have expected that. Number one, I wouldn't have signed him. First of all, for the Sixers, I wouldn't have signed him again. He's getting older. I think he's not as good as he once was. But I was shocked because I never pegged him as someone that pivots off a disappointing postseason. And not only stays, but he takes a pay cut. He always just seemed like more of a solo guy to me, more so than I don't know. It shocked me that I really made a team first decision. Okay, so the Celtics apparently offered Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and a draft pick for Kevin Durant. The way I see it, for the Celtics, Jaylen Brown, I wouldn't really want to trade him at this point. But I mean, if you're getting Kevin Durant for it, it's not a bad thing. And I think it's kind of fair because Jaylen Brown is, I think he was the best part for the Celtics in those finals. Jason Tatum had his moments in his games even where he was great, but Brown was the most consistently great player in that team, Tatum was a little, I just think the issue wasn't defense, it wasn't Jaylen Brown. I don't think it was the coaching. I honestly think it was mostly Jason Tatum, not performing at the right times. But the thing is, you can't move off Jason Tatum. Like, if you're trying to fix that problem, you can't move off him because he's kind of your future. The way I see it, though, I don't know if the Nets should have really declined this trade because, it's... I think they're offering, Jaylen Brown, who seems to only be getting better. He seems to be only getting better, and, KD is getting older. He's not going to give you 82 games. Jaylen Brown's younger. He has more time. And like I said, you can't move off Jason Tatum, even if you're trading him for Kevin Durant, because you have to build your future around Tatum. So, I don't know. I thought it was a decent trade, but Nets didn't. Alright, so Amari Cooper thinks CeeDee Lamb is ready to be a number one receiver. And when you think about it, honestly, last year, CeeDee Lamb already was there. And I think Cooper said that in this podcast. CeeDee Lamb's already there as a number one receiver. He already had more yards than Cooper last year. I think he was 16th and Cooper was like 34th, so... He was a better receiver last year. He was number one. So he's already in that role, I think. The Cowboys' offense hasn't been their issue the last few years. It's just their defense is like the worst worst thing I've ever seen. I mean, the only guy that I can even see making a play for their defense is Micah Parsons. It's like I don't see anyone else doing anything for them, you know? Alright, so I'm gonna go over some storylines that I'm really looking forward to going in the NFL season. The first is gonna be, let's see, I'm gonna go with Belichick's and the Pats. They have a tough end of the schedule. Let's see. Here we go. So they're end of their last after their bye week. They got the Jets. That's okay. Vikings in Minnesota. That can be tough. The Bills. That's going to be rough. The Cardinals. The Raiders are going to be better. The Bengals are going to be good. The Dolphins. And then the Bills again. So after their bye week, they got a rough schedule coming up. The Jets are doable, I think, for the Pats. But they can even lose that game. Like, that's not even a guaranteed win. The Dolphins isn't either. The Dolphins got Tyreek Hill. They're going to be probably a little bit better than last year. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with, because, Belichick's always been an end-of-the-season guy. So, let's see how they do with it. Because, the beginning of their schedule isn't much better. Like, weeks 1 to 5, Dolphins, again, it could be a challenge. Steelers, okay. Ravens, it's a challenge. Green Bay's a question mark, The Lions, they're not going to be hard. But I'm just interested to see, because if he starts off slow, like he normally does, Belichick, it might not be the best down the road, because those last few weeks are brutal. Alright, let's go with, the Cowboys have an early schedule that's kind of tough. And I'm also interested in McCarthy's future with them, because I didn't mind the Cowboys hiring Mike McCarthy at first. I thought it was decent. A decent hire. I was actually happy for him, because I was shocked that he didn't even get a job the year after he was fired. He was retired for a year. I thought he'd go to, like, the Browns, Jets, or something. He went to the Cowboys. I thought that was the best place for him. I thought that was the most capable landing spot. So, they're probably going to start 0-2. I'm going to be straight up. That's, like... So, let's go weeks 1 through 8. It starts off pretty brutal. You got the Bengals and the Bucks in weeks 1 and 2, or Bucks and Bengals weeks 1 and 2. Probably 2 losses. Giants is okay, they're kind of a mess. The Commanders are kind of a mess too. Then you go to the Rams in week 5. If you start off 2 and 3, it's going to be, well, they can beat bad teams, okay, but this has been a narrative for years. Okay, they're 2 and 3, they're not bad. Yeah, they beat 2 teams that are a mess. The 3 teams they beat that weren't a mess and were contenders, they've lost to. After that, it kind of eases up a bit. Eagles might be dangerous next year. They're coming off of a playoff win. Or no, a playoff appearance, my bad. I think they are the most capable team in the NFC East, which is obviously no accomplishment. But, I honestly think, what's his name? Nick Sirianni is a better coach than I expected. Jalen Hurts is probably going to get better. Devontae Smith is going to get better. They got A.J. Brown. I think they have potential. So that might be a loss for them, too. They start off 2-4 now. Then they go to the Lions, probably 3-4. Then they get Chicago. I'm gonna say they beat Chicago. I think the Chicago's a bit of a mess. Alright. So, what's that start of the season? They're 4-4. Not bad. The rest, I'm going to probably predict the rest of their season later on in this podcast, but it's a rough start of the season. And if they start off bad enough, I think people are going to start to question McCarthy's job stability. Alright, let's see, what else? I also want to go over the Packers' early road games and how Rodgers is going to deal without a legitimate number one guy. I want to see how he deals with that. It's going to be interesting. They have, really tough road games at the beginning. I think they open up with a loss to the Vikings at first. I think they beat the Bears in week 2. The Bucs at Tampa Bay. That's a loss. So they open up 1-2. Pats, I'm going to say they win. They're in Green Bay there. I think they start off 2-2. Pretty good. Giants are a mess. I think that's 3-2. Jets, I think they can beat because this is their home stretch now. They have a stretch of home games. I think they beat the Jets, beat the Giants. It's possible they lose to the Commanders, honestly. Every team gets upset once a year. I think Green Bay's normally comes in the middle of the year. I'm going to say they lose to Minnesota. Or no, the Commanders. I might be thinking negatively there, but they're 4-3 now. And they're at Buffalo, 4-4. At the Lions, 5-4. Versus the Cowboys, I'm going to say 6-4. Titans is a tough one. I'm going to say 6-5. I think it's a little... I could be being pessimistic right now, but I don't know if I'm entirely wrong. They might lose to the Titans. Eagles? Who knows? Maybe 6-6. It's at Philadelphia. I don't know. I think I'm going to go with the worst case scenario and say 6-6. Bears, 7-6. They got a bye week. 7-7 once they go out to the Rams, because the Rams are better than them. Dolphins, I'm going to go 8-7. Then they verse the Vikings at home. I think at this point, they have most things figured out. I'm going to say they go 9-7, then the Lions, 10-7. So worst case, I'm going to say 10-7. Best case is 12-5 if they beat the Lions, if they beat the Titans and the Eagles. I'm going to say they go 10-7. That's what I'm going with. I think it's just going to be a tough year without Adams, Finally, the last story and scheduling conflict I'm looking forward to is the Chiefs without Hill now. It makes a difference, definitely. Sure, they have Kelsey, but they don't really have any other top targets other than him. And you can't throw the tight end every time. People will shut that down quite easily. Let's see. Who do the Chiefs have? Alright, they got the Cardinals week 1. let's say they open up with a win at the Cardinals. Let's say they beat the Chargers in Kansas City. They open up 3-0. I'm gonna say they lose to the Bucs for their first loss at home. 3-1. Raiders is a tough one. I'm gonna give them the edge since they're at home. So they open up 4-1. They verse the Bills. I'm gonna say 4-2. I think the Bills. I have the Bills and Rams in the Super Bowl next year. I think they go 4-2 now. They're at San Francisco. That's a tough one, actually. San Francisco's interesting. They didn't really pick it up until the end of the year. I think it's going to be similar in this year. This is week 7. I'm going to give the Chiefs the win. So it's 5-2. They verse Tennessee. I'm going to say 6-2. Jags 7-2. Then they're at the Chargers. I think I'm going to give them the loss of this one. The Chargers, they just keep getting better and better. I think the Chiefs are kind of declining now. I could be wrong, but I'm gonna say they split their series with the Chargers. So now they're 7-3. Then they got the Rams. I'm gonna say 7-4. Bengals 7-5. Broncos, I'm gonna say 8-5. I think they still have the upper hand on the Broncos. Even with Russell Wilson. I think they're just a better overall team right now. But, it's, I think, alright, so they're 8-5 right now. They'll beat the Texans 9-5. They'll beat the Seahawks 10-5. I think maybe they lose to the Broncos in week 16. The Broncos have to get used to a system, I think, like a new system with Russell Wilson. It might take some time. I'm going to say they figure it out, and I think they wind up beating the Chiefs at the end of the year. So the Chiefs now are 10-6, and then they're at the Raiders. I'm gonna say 11-6 for the Chiefs. It's gonna be tough without Hill, though. It's gonna be a bigger change than I think most Chiefs fans are anticipating. All right. So Stafford is in Tier 2 by The Athletic, and like I said, I think the Rams have a good chance to repeat next year. If not, maybe make the Super Bowl and, lose, or something like that. I don't know, but think about it. At least appearing, I think. The thing they can do. Because the NFC is significantly less competitive than the AFC. So I think it's going to be easier for them to make the Super Bowl this year. Because Adams went to the AFC. That's a big one. And a lot of the AFC team, Wilson went to the AFC as well. So that's two of the best NFC players that are no longer with them. The AFC teams are just getting better, and I think I just think they have all the ingredients: good quarterback, smart head coach, and just a good overall roster. It just they just look. They just look like they're in a good spot. It's just hard to argue against them right now. Alright. So back to the trade offer that was made. The Celtics offered Brown for KD, and that's declined. KD is 34. Like I said, he's not going to give you 82 games. I'd give you exactly what they gave him. I'd give you a good player, Jaylen Brown, a good bench player, Derek White, and one If I had to, I'd give them 2 picks. If they were pushy about it, I'd go with 2 picks. If they pushed it. I think that's a fair trade. Nets apparently said no. They declined. Didn't agree with it. Alright. So Ben Roethlisberger is getting a little get off my lawn kind of stereotype kind of guy. He said the young players in the NFL are coddled today. He brought up the NIL, obviously thing. That's what a lot of people who don't agree with how much with college athletes making money, of course, they're going to argue that. But these aren't just random, 20-year-olds that are making money. It's the best athletes. I mean, I can see both. I can see the arguments from both sides, obviously, because it's they're obviously talented athletes. They should be recognized. Should they be paid for how they're getting recognized? I don't know. But I'm not going to make a statement on that. But, I think players want to be coached hard today. I think they don't get as much credit today as they should. And that's because they're in, a more privileged era kind of thing, They have more spoils than the older players used to get. I think that means that they're not as competitive or hardworking as the other players. Because the Celtics this year, they got their new coach, Udoka. And it was a mess for a bit, but then at the end of the year, I don't think any team really worked harder than the Celtics. It was really coming together. I think my main point is, don't confuse massive money with coddling. Players get paid more today than they used to. But I don't think that should be confused with coddling, because that doesn't mean that they're still not, working hard to get the money they have. So I don't know. Just don't confuse it. Alright, so Draymond Green thinks the 2017 Warriors would have beaten MJ's Bulls, but to also stop comparing eras. But I don't think Draymond understands how kind of hypocritical this statement kind of is. Or more double standard. That's what it really is. I agree with him on not comparing eras because it's different. If the 17 Warriors played against the 98 Bulls in that era, the Bulls would have won. Because they were built to play in that era. The 17 Warriors aren't. So, of course, the Bulls would win in their era, But if the 98 Bulls came to play the 17 Warriors in 2017 in that era, then, the 17 Warriors would win because they have more shooters and are more built to win in this era. It's the same thing when they compare eras with LeBron and Jordan. If you put LeBron in that era, he probably would have played like everyone else did in that era. It was less... I don't even know what it's called. Less cautionary, I guess, not everything was a foul. It was... I don't know. It was a lot... a lot of the flagrant fouls you see right now in the NBA were not flagrants in the 90s. But I don't think that means LeBron would have struggled. Like, I mean, of course you can make that argument considering how he plays today. You know, he plays in a flopping era where everyone tries to get a foul. Like, he's not this... Like, he didn't, you know, train himself to be good in the 90s because he's playing in this new era. You know, if Jordan came in here in this era, I don't know if the players he played against were as athletic or naturally gifted as the people in this era. You know, this era is more reliant on the three-point shooting, way more than they were in the 90s, and Jordan struggled with that. You know why? Because he was born to play in the 90s. So, you know, I think both of them would struggle in each other's era, because it's different things they're preparing for. You know, so you can't compare eras. It's not really fair to do that, but it's really a double standard, though, because he's like, don't compare eras, but we destroyed the 98 Bulls, you know? So he's literally comparing eras in the statement where he's saying, don't compare eras. It just doesn't make sense to me. Alright. So David Ortiz was greeted with an ovation at his Hall of Fame introduction. I think he was a great clutch hitter. One of the best in his time. You know? But I'm going to be serious. I find it unfair that he, who also tested positive for steroids, gets in the Hall of Fame when Barry Bonds, who literally broke multiple records with steroids, didn't. Like, they both use steroids. It's just one was more... You know, I doubt it's that he used more steroids. No, he just benefited more from them because he's a better player, I think. And that's what it is, you know? I don't know. I think Bonds is arguably one of... I think he... I mean, I'll never put anyone ahead of Babe Ruth just because of his... his impact on the game. But Bonds is definitely up there as one of the best players in baseball. Even without the steroids, he averaged like 290 batting average, and he averaged like 30 homers. Like, he was still a great player without the steroids before, like, when he was clean. I don't know. I don't think it's fair. So, Kyler Murray is mandated with 4 independent study hours a week with his new deal. And, you know, it's working. Like, he's improved every year. I wouldn't be shocked if the Cardinals went far this year. Possibly the Super Bowl. You know, Kyler is, he's been improving every year, you know, with his stats. I had him in the running for this year's MVP, too. I think this is Josh Allen's year, though. I think it's the Bills' year, honestly. But, you know, you're in one of the toughest divisions of football. It's pretty, important to have the guy for you, the franchise guy. And they locked him up. So, like, if I get 5 more years of Kyler like this, you know, and if he gives me 1 declining year out of those 5, it's okay. I'll take that. Because you give me 4 years of Kyler playing at the level he is right now. That's pretty damn huge, I think. And, you know, there's a lot of franchises that can't say they've gotten the quarterback right 3 times. The Packers have. Favre, Rodgers. I think the Cardinals have.